Hope you all had a pleasant Thanksgiving. Sorry, the football couldn't complement the food, but we're here to talk about whatever stuff we got in week 12. And whoever's in the comments section, thanks for checking in. Let's hit the intro. And Jared's gone. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the one and only RotoHackers podcast, and appearing right as I'm about to call him in, it's Jared.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what just happened. All of a sudden, my browser just I just got booted out, and then it said you must enter your login code or something like that.
Well, we couldn't have a good introduction without a dramatic entrance, so
there you go.
Yeah. It works out. That's Jared. Around here, we call him the absolute stud, and my name is A.J. Herschel, the kid, and Judah Buddha, our normal host, is on special assignment this week. I believe it was last year, a couple years ago, he was on special assignment. Possibly becoming the new head coach of Washington back then. So there's no telling what he is up to now.
I believe, based on what he said, I don't know how accurate this is. And it doesn't sound it. I was going to say it doesn't sound accurate. I'll put it this way and say it sounds as accurate as anything else he says. I believe he is headed to New Mexico to look at starting an expansion team there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see that. They got some college football roots there. 33rd team in the NFL.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know if I feel like maybe Albuquerque doesn't have the population to support an NFL team. But,
right.
I mean, it would by no means be, Judah Buddha's first doomed to failure venture. So
wow. And hey, if you need a team name, a fantasy team, one of mine a couple of years back, I co-managed, called the Albuquerque Alpacas. So hey, we got something for you right there. But speaking of Mr. Judah's exercises in futility, Anthony brings up, good evening, RotoHackers. Good evening, Anthony. Good to have you with us. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Hope you did too. How did your teams do? Well, Jared, I know how you did against Judah Buddha in our RotoHackers League. And for people who don't know, Judah's beaten you once?
Yeah,
ever?
He beat me the last time we played. But prior to that, I was either, I think, 6-0.
Right.
I can't remember if it's 6-0 or 7-0. I'll go with the under. I'll go with the conservative estimate and the 6-0. And he beat me in our game earlier this year in another league that we're in. And ironically, I think I mentioned last week or on the last podcast we did that, of course, we were playing in RotoHackers week. Actually, what I didn't realize at the time is that we're playing in both of our leagues.
Oh,
this week.
No way.
So it's Jared Judah week. So
interesting. Jared Judah week. All right.
So that one got off to a pretty good start for me with Dak Gott and TJ Hawkinson. He had Tony Jones, which did not get off to as good of a start for him. And in our other league right now, it's very early, but I'm a 15-point favorite in that one because I had Zeke and Dawson Knox going.
Nice.
So they turned in. Zeke was solid, and then Dawson Knox had nearly 17, even though he only caught 3 passes, 2 touchdowns. So so I'm off to a good start in there. So
nice.
My matchups with Judah Buddha, it's almost like Tom Brady's career at this point. It's like, what else can you do? Can you accomplish? And to be able to beat him twice in 1 week would be, I feel like, a new and memorable accomplishment. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
We'll see, but that's what I'm pulling for.
See, maybe that's what Judah's actually doing. He is driving across the country to individually motivate all of his players against you over this next week. Maybe that's what he's doing.
Well, I don't want to question his line of thinking. But
yes, you do. Don't be modest. Yes, you do.
But I'll do just that. And I'm not entirely, I don't want to say this in a mean way. I'm not entirely sure that he understands how time zones work. And I think he might be heading west in the hopes that he can somehow like see into the future from a later time zone and then go back and put in players who have done. I don't know what his line of thinking is. I think I have a feeling it's something along those lines. Okay. So I don't know. We'll see how that works.
There's no telling. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Liam Wilson says, good evening, boys. Well, good evening, Liam. Good to have you with us. Good to catch the stream for the first time in a while. Good to have you back, man. And good luck. I know I've got you this week in RotoHackers. I got a nice little boost from Diggs, and Cedric Wilson turned out kind of nice for me.
Cedric Wilson did.
13.9 points last week. Really happy about that, but it's going to be a fight. My season is in dire trouble, as you and Judah have brought up multiple times, that my team is the least deserving team to be where we are, with the least amount of points scored by far in the league. And we're 7th out of 14. We're a game out of the playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. So every win counts for the Ice Ring Falcons to snag that 6th seed right now. So
and you got me next week. So
yeah,
my team's starting to come on a little bit. So if I beat Judah this week, I will have gone 6-2 after starting 0-4. So it's on a hot streak, but I basically almost have to win out in order to it's still going to be really hard for me to get into the playoffs, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Jonathan Koff checking in. I believe that's how you pronounce it. What's up, Jonathan? Good to see you. Ask Kareem Hunt or Javonte Williams PPR, because Kareem's going to be back this week for the Cleveland Browns. So he's been activated off IR. What do you think, Jared? Jack Conklin's also coming back for their offensive line. Do you think this is going to be a game where they rely on Chubb for the most part? They rest Hunt? Because Javonte, as a person who has him, hasn't exactly been the most consistent. So what do you think, Jared? Risk on Hunt, or do you stick with Devonta?
Man, that is tough because on one hand, the Chargers' run defense is not great. If we're looking at like who's playing the worst run defense, it's Williams and the Chargers. Williams versus the Chargers. On the other hand, the Broncos have just sort of they've even though it's been a close split. Melvin Gordon has been getting just a little bit more, and you wonder if against the Chargers, maybe they're going to try to let it be a little bit of a revenge game for him. I don't know. That might not really factor into it. Yeah. But man, when the Ravens, when the Browns get going, they're playing the Ravens. When the Browns get going, with Chubb and Hunt, man, it can look really good. Hunt tends to have kind of the healing. It's hard to predict what his workload's going to be. I would say, as we get closer to the, tomorrow is Sunday. I would wait and see what they say, tomorrow, if there's any sort of indication. Tough thing is it's a night game. And so you don't know for sure. But I would maybe wait and kind of see if they give sort of any indication that he's going to have a reduced role or anything like that. If that's the case, then I'd maybe roll with Javonte. If not, it's really tough to not want to roll the dice on Kareem because he's just shown that upside of being able to deliver you 20 to 25 point times. So I would be slightly inclined to go with Hunt unless they say something about how he's going to have a reduced workload.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those games where I check 20 minutes before game time or whatever, because you can wait on this. Javonte's got a 3:00 game, so you can wait a little later to figure out if Hunt's going to be healthy. Like if all of a sudden they say at 12, okay, we're just not he's not going to do much. So I think it's one of those things you wait till 2. And then I think I agree. I think Hunt is a really, really high upside this week, especially with a Cleveland team that's just decimated at wide receiver and just can't really throw at all. It says, thanks. I also have AJ Dillon. What do I do with him? Right now, I'm starting him as well as one of them. We've brought up before, Dillon hasn't done incredibly well with Aaron Jones out, but he's a starting running back in a very good offense. You have to start AJ Dillon, right, Jared?
So I've got to check and see what was the latest on Jones, but it looked like Jones was back.
Wow.
He's questionable, but he did get in like back-to-back limited practices.
Yeah.
So that makes me nervous for AJ Dillon because he's a little bit more of sort of a power type runner. The Rams, those are one of the better run defenses in the league. They're not quite to the level of a Tampa or something like that. So Los Angeles has given up the 13th fewest. So it's not, it's not just some completely shutdown defense, but
right.
They're good. They're good. And I don't think, I'm not sure how well they, lend to Dillon if Aaron Jones is back. So if Jones is back again, that's a 4:00 game. So 4:25 game. I would be inclined to, I would, if the other option is, so I guess, his other options are, Hunt, Javonte. So I'm not sure how many, all of these need to be, started, but, at this point, I'd probably be a little more inclined to go with those other options that he's mentioned over Dillon, unless Aaron Jones is out. Right. What do you think?
I'm going to be honest. I kind of like Dillon. He got passes out of the backfield last week on only 11 carries as well. I feel like Aaron Jones isn't going to be 100%. And they'll probably use them to spell him. I'm probably leaning a bit toward keeping Dillon in just because I'm iffy on Hunt. But if you're like me, if you're one of those people who has a safe lead, just go with the safe AJ Dillon and Javonte, I would say. If you need boom or bust, then you might want to swap in Hunt. But if you're up like at 2:00, if it looks like you're gonna get the W, go with the safe guys. That's what I would say. Since it's later games, you have a little bit of time to decide.
And to his question on Javonte or Bateman, I would still go Javonte. I mean, the Chargers' run defense is bad. Bateman, he's getting some looks, but he tends to be sort of behind Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews in that offense, in that passing offense. So he's getting 6 to 8 looks a game. He hasn't had a touchdown yet. Cleveland is one of the solid pass defenses. I would go Javonte.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Javonte definitely has a lower floor than Bateman, in my opinion. And I think Hollywood back actually helps out Rashod Bateman. Last week, he was barely able to get anything going. But, then again, that Chicago game was just terrible to watch. And he didn't have Lamar throwing to him either. So I like Bateman for upside. I feel like Javonte's ceiling is 10, 11. But he does catch more passes out of the backfield in general than Melvin Gordon. So I wouldn't be surprised going Javonte, but as a full flex PPR, I'm very tempted to go Rashod Bateman, to be 100% honest with you. I feel like that Ravens-Browns game is going to be a fight, and they're going to need all hands on deck. Liam also says, sorry, I couldn't put up a good fight against Judah. Still licking his wounds for the 30 points he put up. I think he, LOL, think I hold the record for lowest score, which I did check. And yes, you do have the record for lowest score in RotoHackers history. But to be fair, you're going up against the person who has the lowest average in points this season in RotoHackers history, me. So it seems to be a perfect fit this week.
It's gonna be liars.
Yeah, basically. That is literally it. It's basically a Lions-Bears game. Exactly.
I'm just kidding. I'm still trailing you in the standings, so I can't joke too much.
Drew Vano in the chat. What's good, my dudes? What's good, Drew Vano? Good to see ya. Good to have you in the chat again. Love that Bulls hat. Love we're actually playing well as well. Hopefully we pull it out tonight against Miami. Ray Gibson in the chat. Been a minute, Ray. Good to see you with us. He asks, best defense special teams for week 12. So this is like if you don't have the luxury of being able to hang on to Buffalo or Dallas all year. Who are you going with, Jared? What matchups are you looking at for defense? Because I know a lot of people are picking up Houston just because they're playing the Jets and Zach Wilson's first game back. I'm a little iffy on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of iffiness this week. I think a lot of the weeks I've seen like clear defenses that were pretty good options. This week, I mean, obviously a lot of them at this point, Saturday night with several Thursday games, a lot of those are going to be taken. So, even like Houston's 50% rostered. So they're still out there if you're desperate. A lot of the ones that were, projected that had high projections from Yahoo, Chicago, Buffalo, Dallas, they've already played. Most of those didn't really do that much. Buffalo had a good game, but had a solid outing. But the others, in some cases it's like bad team playing bad team, right? And so it's like Atlanta versus Jacksonville. Do you roll the dice on one of those defenses? But yet, either one or both of those offenses could be so bad that they put the other, that they give up all, and then but then put the other team in scoring position. So it's really kind of tough. I do kind of like Houston. Houston's coming off of back-to-back double-digit games, 15 points and 6 points, and that was against the Dolphins and the Titans on the road. Actually, both of those were on the road. So I think Zach Wilson. Man, Zach been bad this year. So I do like them as a kind of roll the dice option on them if they're out there, because I think there's not a ton of, I don't think there are any sort of surefire, like, oh yeah, let's roll with them options left at this point. So of what's available, if Houston's out there, I would probably go get them.
Yeah, if they're already gone, like a couple of last gasps, maybe. Carolina hasn't been terrible, and they're playing Miami, who's looked even worse. I don't think that they could do much worse this week. On the other side, like if we're getting to really low chances of scoring and everything, look, I know Tennessee got dropped by literally everybody after getting obliterated by Houston last week, but historically, they've been pretty good on defense this year. They put up 10-plus points against the Colts, the Rams, and the Chiefs. And if it's one thing the Titans know how to do, it's play well against good teams and play poorly against bad teams. So being that they're going up against New England, they could probably get you a solid 4 or 5 if you need a stopgap. Get you a couple sacks, probably let up 22 points. But, a lot of people are hoarding 2 or more defenses this late into the year. So I think that's another one, like last gasp effort. I would say go grab them. Drew Vano up next. Mark Andrews or Gronk? PPR, great question. Gronk is officially back, officially back, and came and took a crazy amount of targets again. But Jared, Mark Andrews kind of been your guy for a couple of years now. So who are you feeling this week for PPR?
So I think this is a good problem to have. I would be more than happy to roll out either one of these guys at tight end. It's tough. I think I'm actually probably going to say Gronk in this case. Both of them, Andrews is averaging about, 9 targets a game over the last 3 games. 10, 8, 10 is what has been his target share over the last 3 games. And, I think that was something I talked about earlier in the year, for both him and Brown, of why I thought Brown was going to have a breakout year was on late last year, and the fact that they lost, every single running back they had, and then now they're down to like their sixth running back with Devonta Freeman coming out of retirement is that they've just got to throw the ball more.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to like about Mark Andrews. But it's still Lamar Jackson throwing to him. And I think it's still, tougher for him when we get to the red zone. For as good of a year as Mark Andrews has had, he still only has 4 touchdowns on the year. Gronk, on the other hand, Gronk is kind of the red zone go-to option for Brady. So even though Gronk has played, less than half these as Mark Andrews, he's had the same number of touchdowns. And here's another important point to consider. So
hit me.
So Mark Andrews had just a monster game earlier this year. He had 13 targets, 11 receptions, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 2-point conversions, 30 to the tune of 36.2 points. Who was that against?
Goodness.
Unfortunately, it was against my Indianapolis Colts. Who is Rob Gronkowski playing this week? My Indianapolis
Colts.
They're not tight ends. They've always struggled with Gronk. They're on the season. They're giving up the 6th most fantasy points. That's probably skewed by that Mark Andrews game. Still, I like Gronk. Antonio Brown's, still out. So I like Gronk as a red zone option. I'm leaning Gronk.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make it around to Gronk for you, me, and Drew. I like Andrew's target share a lot, especially because this is PPR, and that's what makes this as close as it is. If it was half point, no PPR, going Gronk easy, but yeah, the red zone targets come down to him and Mike Evans, and Mike Evans catches 2 passes a game, so I wonder who I'm more scared of. Yeah, I'm going to go with Gronk on this one. Cademan Bauer says, hey, RotoHackers. What's up, Cademan? Good to see you, man. He asks, is Judah on assignment? Yes, he is, and we're not 100% sure what he's on assignment on. There's been rumors about him connecting with his fantasy team, something with time travel, starting an NFL expansion team. Maybe getting the Texans to move out of Houston. We're not entirely sure what's going on, but something with Albuquerque is all we can tell you. He should give us the full report sometime soon. Drew Vano says pick 2: AJ Dillon, Kareem Hunt, and Eli Mitchell. Mr. plays a game, then breaks his finger, then plays a game, then gets injured, and as good as he is when he's healthy, he can't stay healthy to save his life. So, Jared, what do you think? Do you go Dillon, Hunt, Mitchell? He has Jeff Wilson. You get to pick 2 on this one.
I think, I like Eli Mitchell if he's in there. If he's not, I think I'm probably rolling with whoever's starting for the 49ers. And then Hunt as the other one.
Really not feeling Dillon this week.
No, I don't know. I mean, overall, Dillon has been a solid flex, kind of coming on after, about week 4 or so. But most of the time he's also been around, 10, 11, 12 points. He had a big game, obviously while Aaron Jones was out against Seattle, where he had 2 touchdowns and 66 yards, and he had some receptions. But without Aaron Jones, he's pretty well been capped around 11 or 12 points. That's that's good for a flex. But when you've got someone like Mitchell, who we've seen when he's starting can put up some bigger numbers. He's had a handful of games in that 15 to 20 range. When you've got somebody like Hunt, who even being the number 2 back, has had some games where he can put up in that 20 to 25 range. I think just the ceiling is higher with them if Aaron Jones is back with Dillon, and the fact that they're playing the Rams. So I would throw all this out the window again if Aaron Jones ends up being out and it's just Dillon going, which is still a possibility. But if Aaron Jones is back and it looks like he's going to get a decent workload, then I would rank Dillon last out of those options.
Got it. So if Jones is out and Dillon's going to be, the number 1, would you do Hunt or Niners running back? And this is PPR, I forgot to mention.
Oh, right. Yeah. That is tougher.
Yeah.
I would probably go. I was going to look and see what Mitchell has sort of been getting. That broken finger, I wonder if that might, limit what they try to do with Eli Mitchell in the passing game. So in that case, I might go with Hunt as the number 2 back. I mean, both of them have an injury, and you don't know how it's going to. You're just guessing how it's going to affect their playing time and performance. But with it being far, Mitchell having that broken finger, maybe that limits how they use him in the passing game. Then I would probably go Hunt.
Yeah, it's tough with all of these guys basically questionable. Eli Mitchell, I'm probably not starting anywhere because he's a game time call at this point. I like Jeff Wilson. The 49ers give their running backs a ludicrous amount of carries. Jeff Wilson and Trey Sermon combined last week had 29. The last time Eli Mitchell played, he had 27. This is a team that runs the ball incessantly. So I like a 49ers running back here. I probably am leaning Kareem. Man, that's tough. Maybe Dillon, because I think he's good for goal line. Hunt, I feel like won't get the touchdowns, which I know this is PPR doesn't matter as much, but I'd like Hunt to be 100%. So I'm just a little bit iffier on him, but yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one to have right there. Anthony asked, Devonta Smith or Mike Williams, half-point PPR. If you had asked us this 6 weeks ago, we would have said Mike Williams in a heartbeat. And now the script has been flipped. He's back to his old boomer bust scenario, and Devonta Smith has had a nice run of a couple of games. So what do you think, Jared? Devonta this week, who's going up against our favorite team, the New York Football Giants, or Mike Williams going up against Denver?
Yeah, another tough one. I would be a little bit more inclined, I suppose, at this point to go with Devonta Smith, even though the Eagles are just not throwing the ball that much. He has got
another thing we wouldn't have said 6 weeks ago. The Eagles aren't throwing that much.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you have Howard and Boston Scott, how can you not just lean on that running game?
Obviously. Oh yeah.
So yeah, all of a sudden the Eagles have just decided like, oh yeah, no, it's just going to be better if we just run it like 70% of the plays. So
yeah,
Smith has still gotten half a dozen targets in each of their last 3 games. You still risk the possibility of him, going back to the Detroit game where they blew them out so badly. He only had 3 targets, caught 1 pass for 15 yards. So you run that risk, but Mike Williams has proven to have a pretty low floor lately too. So I'm actually going to go with Devonta Smith. And hope that they don't blow out the Giants. I think the risky part is there. New York has up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs, so it could just be lots of Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. I would. I'll roll the dice on Devonta Smith, but I don't feel super great about either one of those. You can make you can make an equally good argument for Mike Williams, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Devonta Smith. Chargers scare me just a little bit against Denver. Denver has a very good defense, and I get that the Chargers either score 50 points or 10. So since they haven't played the Broncos, they really don't know what they're going to do. But I like Devonta Smith's consistency for half-point PPR. Mike Williams is a dart throw at this point for whether he's going to score a touchdown or not. And Devonta Smith was my favorite rookie wide receiver so far at the start of the season. And I don't think Philly has that many other people to throw to outside of him and Goddard. So I like Devonta this week. I like his target share. I like his matchup against the Giants. I'm going to lean Devonta Smith on this one. Liam Wilson, any faith in the Seahawks figuring out how to play normal football again? I'm hesitant more than normal to play Lockett. And keep in mind, we're all already hesitant to play Lockett. So this is double hesitancy. What do you think, Jared? I mean, this applies to Wilson, to Collins, Lockett, Metcalf. What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, I don't know. Who you're. Well, if it's in RotoHackers, I can look and see who your other options are. Who your other options are other than Lockett. Mm-hmm. I think if you don't have a ton of great options, then this is a pretty good week to roll out Lockett against Wash, giving up the fourth most points to wide receivers. I feel better about him than Russ. I've got a league where I could start Russ over Lamar Jackson. I don't know. Neither one of those are really, confidence inspiring. So, as for the question about, any faith about the Seahawks figuring out how to play football again, I think we're just at a point where they need to move on from Pete Carroll.
Wow.
I know Pete Carroll's had a good run and all that sort of thing, but at this point they just don't really to know what they want to do. They don't really have an identity anymore. Their identity used to be this killer defense, and then once those started needing to get paid, then that sort of fell apart. The offense is struggling. The defense doesn't seem to know what its identity is. They don't seem to want to trust Russell Wilson, even though they've got DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to throw to. I don't know if if Russ is declining, if they don't trust him for that reason. I mean, it's really hard to say, but something needs to change. And I'm sure we're going to hear, again about the possibility of Russ leaving Seattle in the offseason. And I think it probably makes somebody needs to go. Either it needs to be Russell Wilson or Pete Carroll or both. And probably just try to, because, when you think about what they have, they've got DK, who's consistent. Apart from that, who do they have? What do they have that's really consistent? Tyler Lockett's not. Their running game's not, because Chris Carson can't stay healthy. A lot of the other running backs can't stay healthy. Their offensive line hasn't been good for a while. Their defense is nothing like what it used to be. So what do they have? So, you look at the rest of the NFC West, you've got the Rams, you've got the Cardinals, the 49ers are doing well and are probably going to, stay solid. I think it's just time for Seattle to rebuild. So, no, I'm not super confident that Seattle is going to figure out how to play football again under the current setup.
Wow. Jared, little to no confidence in the Seattle Seahawks anymore. Interesting.
What have they? I'm
not disagreeing with you. I mean, you put up a good argument.
Yeah. I mean, in 7 this year, and again, part of it is about kind of looking to the future of, they're coming off of a good year last year. But I don't know. It's just we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest things about Seattle for me is the fact that they're in the hardest division in football, which may not be true anymore because the AFC North is very, very good. But at least in the NFC, they're in the hardest division where you have to play 3 of the best teams in the NFC, and the Niners with one of the best defenses, the Rams with one of the best teams, and the Cardinals with the best record in 6 times in your division. That's not going to change anytime soon. So he brings up Bateman would be his other option than Lockett. I think I agree with you, Lockett. It's a good week to play him. We all know what Tyler Lockett does at this point. So do I have that much faith? They can't stay healthy. They are having a hard time keeping up on offense, and their defense is just completely deconstructed due to cap space, but also like injuries and players getting older too. Like KJ Wright is still playing, but he's not the same that he was. Cam Chancellor's career just ended on a dime. It's just been a mess for Seattle in the last few years. So I'd still go with Lockett, but it's tough. It is very tough. Marcos Valdez tuned in from Facebook asking, half-point PPR, flex, Dillon, the legend himself, Cordarrelle Patterson, Brandon Ayuk, who's had a resurgence, Devonta Freeman, who all of a sudden has just decided to score touchdowns every week, and T. Higgins. Also, Panthers or Texans defense, thank you, and happy holidays. Let's start with the flex. A.J. Dillon, Cordarrelle Patterson, Brandon Ayuk, Devonta Freeman, T. Higgins. What do you think, Jared? That's not bad options there overall.
No, not bad options. I mean, I think if Patterson is back, and I haven't really looked, so he's questionable.
He's likely to play on Sunday. He's been practicing all week, at least limited, but they need him. They really need him.
They do need him because, I mean, they really don't have anything else besides Kyle Pitts, and Kyle Pitts is a rookie tight end, and he just can't, carry it. So I would probably go with Patterson if assuming he plays. Jacksonville's defense is not, it's not that terrible in some ways, but I would roll with him. I think if he goes, even over Dillon, even over Dillon and those other options.
Yeah. I think this would be, if I was picking just based off, if Aaron Jones is out, I think Dillon is my number one there. With him questionable, Cordarrelle's definitely my number one. Atlanta needs him so bad on offense. And he just finds a way to score points, whether it's with a big run, a touchdown. He's just explosive. If Cordarrelle is out and Dillon is splitting time, I might be inclined to go Brandon Ayuk, which I would not be caught dead saying that in week 4. But he's getting his targets back all of a sudden, with Debo needing to take a little bit of a rest now because he'd kind of been carrying that passing offense for the entire year. So that's probably my order, is Cordarrelle 1 overall, Dillon if Aaron Jones is out, and then if neither of them are in a good situation, I go Brandon Ayuk. Second part of the question is Panthers or Texans defense. The Carolina, we already know the Texans are going up against the New York Jets. The Panthers get the Miami Dolphins. 2 defenses, we said, is good streaming options. You got one you favor this week, Jared?
My sound kind of cut out there for a minute. Was this just the Panthers or defense, or Panthers or Texans defense question? I'm still leaning towards Texans. Not anything really about the Texans as much as I mean, they have had a couple of good games back to back, but it's more about the disaster that is Jets quarterbacks. So Zach Wilson has not been great, and I would give them a shot. I don't really have anything else to add to that. I agree. Happy holidays, Marcos. Thanks for checking in. Cademan asks, Hunter Henry or Noah Fant? This is an interesting one. I'm probably leaning Hunter Henry. I like his red zone targets that he's been getting. Fant is kind of just been, in recent weeks at least, being his same 5 to 8 points that he gets. Of course, he has the touchdown opportunity, but Hunter Henry seems to be the red zone target for the Patriots. Now, he is questionable, so, depending on whether he's healthy or not, but I might be leaning Hunter Henry. What do you think, Jared? Yeah, I think so. I think so too. No fan with everybody back. I mean, he's having some good games here and there, but Henry's a pretty consistent red zone target. I would probably go with.
All right, perfect. He also asks Mac Jones or Micah Parsons for Rookie of the Year, by the way. What do you think, Jared? Who's your Rookie of the Year front runner?
I don't even know that I would put Mac Jones in that conversation.
Wow.
I think there's some, I mean, we kind of give him the quarterback on that. Parsons definitely deserves to be in it, but the other guys that I think you could make a case for, Jamar Chase has been having a great year. But it's going to be kind of interesting to see how he finishes the year, because he started to fall off a little bit the last 3 games. He's been under 50 yards receiving all 3 times. 2 out of the 3, he's been at 32 yards receiving exactly, only 3 catches. So if he trails off, then I don't know that you can then it go to make the argument for him. But 10 games in, he's got 867 yards and 8 touchdowns. So he's potentially looking at I don't know what he could get to at this point. But definitely well over 1,000 yards, definitely well over double-digit touch. I think he's got to be a contender. And then the other one that I would put in there would be Najee Harris.
That's a good one.
He's probably been, I would say, probably the most consistent rookie. I mean, we kind of forget, if you have him on your fantasy team, but you kind of forget if you don't have him and you're not really watching the Steelers, because the offense is so bad. But I mean, he's been so much of their offense. So through 10 games, he's got 7 touchdowns, 5 rushing, 2 receiving, and he's basically just a little over 1,000 yards, basically averaging just over, let's see, I'm counting it up here, so it's like 102 or so yards from scrimmage each game, between rushing and receiving. So man, there's some, I think Parsons and defensive players, it's always tougher. They kind of get overlooked, but then you got Najee and Jamar Chase both. Right now,
but also at the same point, Rookie of the Year, I just remembered, is offense and defense. They have one for each.
That's true. Yeah. And I couldn't remember that off the top of my head.
I had to look it up.
Yeah. So I think Parsons, for sure for defensive, but for offensive, I mean, the Patriots have done well. Mac Jones has played well within that system. But the Patriots aren't really winning because of Mac Jones. I mean, that you've got to have a good quarterback to make the system go. But for me, the offensive rookie of the year would be between Jamar Chase and Najee Harris. So
I think Micah Parsons runs away with defensive right now. There's just no rookie even close to him. I would go Jamar Chase right now. He's been a huge part, especially after the adversity that he faced. All of us wrote him off in preseason after the first 2 weeks. It's like, this is already bad. But man, that LSU connection's working out. They're slinging the rock to him back there every single week, and he's explosive. Najee, his consistency is just eerie sometimes, and I'm so happy for him. But Jamar, just every other week, blows up over an 80-yard touchdown out of the blue, and he's a big part of why the Bengals are winning every now and then. But yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know how to say this. My brain is saying Justin. So JT86TN, pronounce that as you will, with the Deion Sanders profile pick, asks, full PPR and 6-point passing touchdowns, Russell Wilson or Jalen Hurts at quarterback, DK, Deontay Johnson, or Mike Williams at flex, and he has Najee at the running back position, in case that matters for Deontay Johnson conversation. Hurts is my quarterback for me. Russell is not inspired a lot of confidence in me so far this season. Granted, he could have a big game against Washington, but Hurts is the one who's been more consistent. Wide receiver, there I might go DK. I might go Donkey Kong, but Deontay gets the targets a lot. And then, I'd keep Najee in. So I'm probably leaning Hurts, Metcalf. What are you feeling, Jared?
I was just imagining how long we would have been here with Judah trying to pronounce that username as like JT86TN Jita 86 just yeah, we would have been here for a while.
Just in case you don't know, everybody, when the normal host Judah Buddha is here, you get the award of getting your name absolutely butchered on the first attempt. It's kind of a RotoHackers special here.
Yeah. So kind of disappointing. This is where we miss Judah. So okay, so Wilson or Hurts. It's still tough for me to trust Russell. And I've got to go with Jalen Hurts. And DK. Yeah, DK at flex. No, that doesn't. The Najee running back thing doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to me about Deontay. Deontay's just unfortunately saddled with Ben Roethlisberger and just getting limited passes there. So yeah, it's probably an easy Hurts and DK for me.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, that makes two of us, Hurts and DK. And Deontay is always really enticing just because of the amount of targets he gets from Big Ben. Like that, 13 in three out of his last 4 weeks. And then I think 13 out of 4 out of his last 5, not including the bye week. And then you keep going, he keeps saying 13. So the more I think about it, the more I might be leaning Deontay, being that it's full point PPR over DK Metcalf. But DK's been so good this year. I don't know if I want to switch that up right now. And we're good. We got his name right. We got the initials. It's where year he's born, and he's from Tennessee. Nice. Very cool. Sorry, you were about to say something, Jared?
Yeah, I mean, Deontay, he is still getting, he's getting double-digit targets, although, his number of receptions is still, like, averaging around half a dozen or so.
Right.
Cincinnati's been a pretty solid pass defense, though.
They have, shockingly.
And Washington has not been. So that is a tough one. I think Deontay's always got the safer floor because of the number of targets he gets. If there's a way to get, I guess you've got a pretty good lineup if you're debating between putting, DK or Deontay at flex. So I assume your other receivers are pretty good because I would probably try to squeeze both those in somehow if I could. But DK's had a couple of bad games, and again, Washington's bad. I just feel like he's due for a blow up game here.
Yeah, true. Drew Vano says pick one: Rashod Bateman, Jamison Crowder, Kenny Golladay. I'm gonna go ahead and say no to Kenny Golladay. Robbie Anderson in PPR. It's between Bateman and Crowder, but to me, there's no telling what happens with Zach Wilson this week. I go Rashod Bateman with Lamar back and Marquise to take defenders away. I say Bateman. What do you never trust a Giants wide receiver? What do you think, Jared?
Yeah, Robbie's had a slight resurgence, with Cam, but that's only because he was just so bad before. So it is between those two for me. I probably would roll with Bateman because if it was one of the other quarterbacks in for the Jets, I think Crowder's more attractive because Corey Davis is doubtful. I don't know. I think you can still make an argument for Crowder there. Let's see. So he had actually, Winston was in there. I was just going back to make sure to see that it was Zach Wilson throwing to him. He had a couple of good games while Zach Wilson was in there. I would.
And he says, or throw out a receiver if you guys think otherwise. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Who all else would be? Who all else would even be available?
Right.
I guess I would go Bateman.
Yeah. The most uninspired recommendation in Jared's RotoHacker history.
Could be.
Yep. Lightning Bauer says most of his fantasy football teams stink. I'm sorry, Lightning Bauer. That's rough. But hello to the RotoHackers anyway. Well, we appreciate you dropping by. That pretty much wraps up all of the questions that we have for now, unless we get something in the last few minutes here. Jared, you got anything else for us? Any things to be wary of? Any last minute pickups? Any of that kind of fun stuff?
Well, yeah, I think there's one significant thing, at least one significant thing that we haven't discussed is that the Titans put AJ Brown on IR.
True.
So he is out for weeks 12, 13, and 14. They hope that he'll be back for he is out for weeks, I think 12, 13, 14, and 15 because he is they've got the bye in there. He's got to miss, but I think he's got to miss 3 games, not 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The little Yahoo thing says the Titans hope Brown returns when first eligible in week 15, right. But then they also have him as marked out for week 15. So I think it's that he's got to miss 3 games. So anyway, so AJ Brown's going to be out for a while. So also Jones has been out, and let's see, Julio is, I guess, eligible to come back week 14. So this is the game that he's going to miss. So if Julio's on 3 of my waiver wires, but he's really been doing a whole lot, regardless of if AJ Brown's in or out. So I mean, you could make the gamble on picking up Julio. That if there's just a receiver you need for this week, if you're in a really deep league, you could look at someone like let's see, what is the Nick Westbrook? I don't know how to pronounce this.
However you pronounce his name.
Yeah, he had 8 targets, 7 receptions, and 107 yards last week against Houston.
Yep.
This week, it's a much tougher assignment with New England giving up the 5th fewest passing yards, or the 5th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So I don't really love, the Titans setup for that.
Yeah.
But the more significant part of that is, if you've got AJ Brown, then he's potentially one of your, top receivers, and you're going to have to be without him for 3 weeks. But it's been a bad year for him, other than 2 big weeks, weeks 7 and 8, where he had 20-something points. The rest of the year has been pretty forgettable. So at this point, I don't know how much you were relying on him anyway. But I think if you were an AJ Brown owner, you were probably still thinking about the talent there and thinking about, oh, he can maybe help me down the stretch, And so now at this point, he's not going to do anything for you until at least the fantasy playoffs. And then do you want to, bring him back and try to run during the fantasy playoffs is the question.
It's a good point. Titans are just a big question mark right now for what happens, because, I mean, for all we know, someone could have AJ Brown and Derrick Henry sitting on their IR, and then week 17, both of them are somehow good to go, and then they win. They win because of that. I don't know what's going to happen.
I would love nothing. I would love nothing more than to see Derrick Henry roll back in week 16 for the fantasy playoffs for the leagues that I've got him in. I don't think that's going to happen. They're talking about him coming back in early January, which would mean potentially week 17. That is tough for me. Or I'm sorry, week 16, I think is what they're. No, it is week 17. Week 17 is which would be the second week of the the fantasy plus, it would be the fantasy championship in regular leagues. But I mean, how often do we ever see a player come back when it's a long timeline, when it's not something like where they're trying to predict a week or two out? How often do they actually come back on the week that they're, the soonest possible week that they're hoping for?
Right.
So I think
David Johnson, who's the other one? Saquon Barkley did that to people. Yeah.
So I think most likely you're going the rest of the season without Derrick Henry and AJ Brown. Then do you even really want to? I mean, depending on your lineup, who else you got? Do you really even want to throw him in there? I've got him in one league, and only one league left, and I think my other options in that league, are basically just to the level where I probably won't even throw out there when he comes back in, because in that league I also have Mike Evans, Justin Jefferson, and DeAndre Hopkins. So unless one of them's hurt, of which Hopkins, but unless one of them is hurt when Brown comes back, it would be hard for me to justify playing him over any of them based on the season he's had. But still notable based on the fact that it's AJ Brown, more so for the name and what he's done in the past rather than what he's done this year.
And the Titans offense, just because who knows what they're going to be like at this point, because it's very few things are going right outside of their win column this year.
Yeah. And as a Colts fan, I'm like, oh, maybe the Colts can catch them after all. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Yep. The Chosen Rose checking in. Good to see you again. Asks, do you guys think Cordarrelle Patterson is a solid flex? I've got Judy as my wide receiver too. Do you think MVS is a sleeper this week? Cordarrelle Patterson, I think, is a solid flex for sure. He's always been a solid flex when he's healthy. I have absolutely nothing against Cordarrelle Patterson. He has been perfectly good basically all year. If he's healthy, I start him. I think Judy's fine. Jared, what do you think about Cordarrelle this week?
Yeah, I think if he goes, you probably play him. Especially as I would play him over, if you had to make the choice between him and Judy, I would play him over Judy, because that Broncos offense, they just tend to sort of spread the ball around when everybody's healthy, and nobody really gets a lion's share of it. So I would go Patterson, but apparently he doesn't have to. Apparently Judy's his wide receiver too. MVS is just always just like a desperation play for me, because he can get a 60-yard touchdown, but if he doesn't, then he's probably not going to give you much of anything. So I don't turn to him unless it's just really a desperation play.
Yeah, I agree. MVS is he's the kind of definition of boom or bust. And especially because Aaron Rodgers was slinging the ball around left and right last week against Minnesota. They barely touched the run. So I feel like this week against the Rams, they're going to want to establish the ground game, especially if, as Drew Vano asks, Aaron Jones is going to play. To which Cademan says, yes, Aaron Jones will play. Believe him. I think he'll be limited. I think he will play, but I think they'll use Dillon to spell him pretty often. And so that even that, the fact that they're trying to get Aaron Jones back this week doesn't excite me about MVS as a receiving target this year. And I'm very curious to see this Devonta Adams, Jalen Ramsey matchup, because the last time we saw this, Devonta kind of torched him. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm not a fan of MVS either. Drew Vano, if Eli Mitchell sits, would you play Jeff Wilson Jr. or Ramondre Stevenson, the Patriots running back? Ramondre's been splitting now with Damian Harris, earned Belichick's trust. I am probably leaning Jeff Wilson if Eli Mitchell sits, just because of the ludicrous amount of times the 49ers run the football. But Jared, I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that's an easy Jeff Wilson for me. If Elijah Mitchell sits, or Eli. Yeah, I get confused between Eli Mitchell and Elijah Moore, and want to call one of them. Yeah. want to call one of them the shorter version and one of them the longer version, and 50% of the time I get it right.
Nice.
Yeah, I'd go Wilson if Eli sits. Stevenson, we don't have Judah here to hype up Ramondre Stevenson, but
right, which he has called since the beginning of the year. Credit to him.
Yeah. Ramondre Stevenson, and I will say, I will agree with him on, like, man, he looks really good when he plays, and it feels like he probably deserves to be the lead back over Damian Harris, but for whatever reason, that's not been the way they've gone. So, so as it is, I would still go with Jeff Wilson over if Mitchell sits over, Stevenson probably splitting touches with Damian Harris versus what's been a pretty good Tennessee run defense. Although, with everything Tennessee's going to be missing and playing in Foxborough, I could also see it being a situation where, their offense is so bad that it leaves the Patriots set up for, a lot of scoring opportunities.
True.
If either one of the running backs were out and one of them was getting a full workload, I would really like that possibility of them still putting up some high points, even against what's been a good run defense.
Right.
Still, though, as it is, just the split there, I don't love it. So,
yep. And Cayman says, dude, I got an awesome rookie card of Ramondre Stevenson. Nice. Hopefully it turns out well. Patriots running backs are basically the definition of a question mark when it comes to longevity. So hopefully that works out for you, dude. Jared, that's all the comments we got, it seems, for today, unless somebody sweeps in at the last moment again. As Cayman brings up, if we're ending now, this is a RotoHackers Shorts. This is about half the length of a normal episode. So if any of you guys who are still watching this RotoHackers podcast, we typically stream twice a week, Tuesdays before the waivers go, Saturdays before the Sunday game. And typically twice a week, go into the playoffs, talk about the draft. Subscribe, leave a like, even if you don't normally. It helps with like algorithm type stuff. Apparently, you've been on YouTube before. I'm not going to give you the whole spiel. Jared, anything else to say for us today?
No, we're just sort of heading into, this is kind of the stretch run before playoffs. There's 4 games left. This to me is really, really kind of at the point where you can kind of look at other guys' records, see where you are, and kind of figure out like what you really need to do in order to make it in some of my leagues. It's win 3 out of the next 4 and hope that nobody that some of the other guys. So like, as an example, like I have a team that's 5-6. It's one of my better rosters. It's scored the 3rd most points in the league. But it's 5-6 and in 6th place because I've also had the 2nd most points scored against me. I've had like 2 close losses. So I've got 2 teams ahead of me that are 6-5. So if I can go 3-1 the rest of the way and hope that both of them go 2-2, then I could, tie them and potentially win on points, which I'm slightly ahead of them in points right now. But you got to go 3-1, and they both got to go 2-2. Otherwise, then I got to go 4-4, and so you can kind of start figuring out what it is that you really need, in order to get in. So I think you, sometimes you also have to kind of play your lineups based on that. It's not like a radically different strategy, but you also have to look and see, like, if you're playing one of those teams ahead of you, at some point during that, you really got to go all in on that week. And, sometimes look ahead to see like, okay, what defense is going to be a good defense for this week, because, whether or not you beat them, if they're ahead of you or if they're trailing right behind you, may dictate whether or not you get into the playoffs. So I think at this point you can kind of start looking a little farther out and figure out kind of what it is that you really need, and you have to kind of start playing not just for this week, but for some of the really big weeks you may have coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, well said. Well, Anthony says, have a good night, guys. Good luck to everyone's teams tomorrow. Good luck to everyone's teams tomorrow and also on Monday, because a lot of the games come down to Monday. And if Lamar Jackson gives me one more heart attack by going into the fourth quarter and then bailing me out, I might flip out. So good luck to everybody. Jared, good luck against Judah ×2 this week. And Liam, good luck there as well. If there's no way Judah Buddha gets 2 wins this year, right? There's no way he goes 2-1 in the season series against Jared, because I know you're projected to win by 80% in RotoHackers.
I'm feeling about RotoHackers. The other one is a deeper league where we've got more roster spot.
League. We're in a 14-team league.
I'm sorry. I phrased that poorly. It's a 12-team league.
Okay.
But there are more positions. So
okay, gotcha.
So we have a third wide receiver position, plus we play kicker and defense.
Yeah.
So there's just more variable there, for the game.
True.
So even though I'm projected as a 15-point favorite, it's it's pretty iffy. And I will say, in that league now, Judah's team is in first place. He's 8-3, and there's 4 of us that are 7-4. But he's had a good year, and he's got Jamar Chase, and so that's obviously been good for him. He's had Kamara, but then Kamara's been on the shelf. But he's had a good year, but he started to fade a little bit while Chase cooled a little bit. So we'll see.
Right.
We'll see what happens. That would be a big that'd be a big thing for him to go 2-1 against me. So
yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
He could go
3-0. It's 3-0 still on the table. It
is true.
He could just completely change, the narrative that that Judah Buddha struggles to beat Jared. That he could just destroy that narrative this year.
Mm-hmm. Well, this week. We will see. We'll see what happens, what the outcome is. Drew Vano says, thanks, guys. Peace. Thanks, Drew, for checking in. But one more question from Chris Genova. Looking for a defense this week and rest of season advice for both. What do you guys think? Titans, Ravens, Rams, and Panthers are on the waiver wire as well. Out of those, I think the Titans are looking like my favorite one for rest of season. The Ravens have a very tough schedule against very good teams, including Cleveland, the Packers. They finish the season with the Rams. They get the Bengals in the first week of the playoffs. That's tough. Those are a lot of really good offenses. Rams are going to be playing some good teams as well. Panthers are eerily safe for fantasy this year, but also they don't inspire a lot of confidence in me as well as the fact that they get the Bills, Bucks, and Saints on the road to the playoffs. So I think the Titans are a good rest of season advice out of the ones that you've given. Jared, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Out of all those, the Titans have a couple of pretty good matchups coming up. I can't say I really love a lot of those. There are some teams that I think, potentially if they get dropped onto the waiver wire, would be a good pickup. San Francisco, two of their last 3 games is Atlanta, Tennessee, and Houston. So that would be
right.
Or I'm sorry, not their last 3 games of the season, but their last 3 games of fantasy, because fantasy will win or end week 17. So right. Atlanta, Tennessee, and Houston. That's a pretty enticing lineup. Right now San Francisco is 71% owned, but they play Minnesota, they play Seattle, they play Cincinnati coming up. Yep. So some teams, could start dropping them if they don't really like what they're seeing. So they're one that I'd kind of like. Let's see, there was another one. New Orleans hasn't been doing a whole lot lately, but their last couple of games of the year, which would be the playoffs, they get Miami and Carolina both at home. So that's sort of enticing. So, and then don't know how much I would want to gamble on the Seattle defense after just talking about the Seattle defense, but 3 of the Seahawks' last 4 games are the Texans, the Bears, and the Lions.
That's good.
And those 2 games in the playoffs, the fantasy playoffs, are Bears and Lions. So if you don't have a great defense and you're swinging for the fences there, sometimes it's better to go with a so-so defense against terrible teams and see what you get.
Yeah, as a Bears fan, I am not even going to deny that at all. And for defenses this week, Chris, if you're looking for a 1 week go, we said Panthers and Texans are 2 good ones. Titans is a last gasp, tough matchup, but they've played well over the year. Cademan brings that. Thanks for checking in with us, Chris. Cademan says 30 minutes ago. Cademan says, "What?" AJ says, "Well, I think that's it." That's true. This kind of happens. We think we're wrapping up, and then we keep going. But he brings up, you guys are great. Thank you so much for all the advice. You're very welcome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the one and only RotoHackers podcast. We had a real good comment section. Hopefully, we should be back Tuesday night is the idea, and we should have possibly Judah Buddha back on assignment.
My schedule changes starting next week, so I should good on Tuesday nights going forward. So even though we're 2/3 of the way into the season,
right?
Better late than never,
Yeah.
So Tuesday nights should be good for me going forward, and which was our old time slot. And then we'll see about Saturdays, but Tuesday should be good.
Perfect. Sounds good. And Drew Vano brings up one more, Philly as a possible defense.
Mm-hmm. Giants, there again with the Giants. Kadarius Toney's doubtful. Sterling Shepard's out.
Yep.
They'll have Saquon, I guess. But I mean, a banged up, turnover prone Giants team is never, and Philadelphia's had a couple of good games back to back. So I think they're a pretty good option this week too. Yeah.
And even rest of the season, guess who they get next? Jets, and then Washington, and then the Giants again. And then Washington, I believe, for the championship. So it's not bad. Good catch, Drew. That's another good one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that'll wrap us up. I'm AJ Herschel. That is Jared, the absolute ultimate stud. Apparently, he's just going to get a new adjective every year is how this goes.
I don't know if I deserve one after how my team's looking RotoHackers this year. Maybe if I can bring it back from 0-4 and get into the playoffs, maybe. But
we'll see. We have a great one, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Hope everything goes well in fantasy this week. We'll see you next time on the RotoHackers podcast. All right, you're not going to say anything?
Good luck tomorrow.
All right, there we go.